In this learning objective, you will learn how a journal is used in the recording process. Although it is possible to enter transaction information directly into the accounts, few businesses do so. Most businesses use these basic steps in the recording process. The first step is to analyze each transaction in terms of its effect on the accounts. The second step is to enter the transaction information in a journal, and then lastly, to transfer the journal information to the appropriate accounts in the ledger. The sequence of events in the recording process is shown on this slide. It begins with analyzing the transaction. Evidence of the transaction comes in the form of a source document, such as a sales slip, a check, a bill, or even a cash register document. This evidence is analyzed to determine the effect of the transaction on specific accounts. The transaction is then entered in the journal. Lastly, the journal entry is transferred to the designated accounts in the ledger. Transactions are initially recorded in chronological order in a journal before they are transferred to the accounts. For each transaction, the journal shows the debit and credit effects on specific accounts. Companies may use various kinds of journals, but every company has at least the most basic form of a journal, a general journal. The journal makes three significant contributions to the recording process. It discloses in one place the complete effect of a transaction. It provides a chronological record of transactions. And lastly, it helps to prevent or locate errors because the debit and credit amounts for each entry can be compared. Entering transaction data in the journal is known as journalizing. To illustrate the technique of journalizing, let's look at the first three transactions of Sierra Corporation. They will make a separate journal entries for each transaction. A complete entry consists of the date of the transaction, the account and amounts to be debited and credited, and a brief explanation of the transaction. On October 1st, Sierra issued common stock in exchange for $10,000 cash. So it will debit cash and credit common stock for $10,000. It will also enter the date of the transaction, which is October 1st. In the second transaction, Sierra will enter the date of the transaction, October 1st, as well as the account and amounts to be debited and credited. In this instance, we're going to debit cash and credit notes payable for $5,000. For the last transaction, or the third transaction, we will enter the date of the transaction as October 2nd, as well as the accounts and amounts to be debited and credited. In this instance, we're going to debit equipment and credit cash for $5,000. Transactions are recorded in chronological order. Note the following features of the journal entries. The date of the transaction is entered in the date column. The account to be debited is entered first. The account to be credited is then entered on the next line and indented. The indentation differentiates debits from credits and decreases the possibility of switching the amounts. The amounts for the debits are recorded in the debit or left column, and the amounts for the credits are recorded in the credit or the right column. And lastly, a brief explanation of the transaction is also provided. I believe this gentleman is a Harvard professor. He has an important message to share with you.
Okay, this is really important. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will always list my debits first.
I do solemnly swear that I will always list debits first.
That I will always list credits second.
That I will always list credits second.
And that I will always indent my credits.
And that I will always indent my credit.
The solution to this exercise will be provided in the next video.